The bell above the heavy wooden door of the Oak Diner in Savannah, Georgia, chimed softly as the afternoon heat built up outside. The historic southern city was unusually quiet that Thursday. Inside, the air smelled of freshly brewed coffee, chicory, and fried green tomatoes. Lucia Mendoza, 28 years old, stood behind the counter, meticulously polishing the chrome espresso machine. Her green eyes, framed by dark lashes, held a deep, quiet exhaustion that made her look older. Her chestnut hair was tied into a messy bun slipping down her neck, and her light blue uniform, though perfectly ironed, had been carefully mended at the elbows. Lucia's day had begun at 5 o'clock. By 6, she had dropped her 6-year-old son, Matthew, at Mrs. Clara's, an elderly neighbor who watched him for a few dollars and leftover food. By 6:30, she was tying her apron for a double shift ending past midnight. She hadn't wanted the double, but the white envelope from the municipal hospital sat unpaid on her counter. Worse, Matthew had woken coughing again, his tiny chest rattling. Mrs. Clara had pulled her aside. "Lucia, honey, that boy needs a real specialist in Atlanta. He's burning up." "I know," Lucia replied, swallowing fear. "I get paid at the end of the week. I'll take him then." It was the same promise every week. Something else always stole the money. The rent, electric, or Matthew's worn shoes. Matthew had been born with chronic bronchial condition. Tests cost more than she earned in 3 months. His father had walked out before the boy spoke his first words. Lucia was truly alone. No family, no savings. Yet she possessed quiet, fierce dignity. She never served a plate without genuine smile. Never let hardships bleed into service. "Good afternoon. Welcome to the Oak," she said to all, warmth real. At 2 o'clock, the diner mostly empty. Lucia refilling napkin dispensers when the chime rang. A man stepped inside, not typical tourist or regular. Every waitress recognized aura of immense wealth. Tailored black suit, costing more than her yearly rent. Crisp white shirt, open at collar. No tie. Sharp jawline, tense shoulders. Cold, distant gaze, suggesting he long stopped expecting goodness from world. He walked past empty stools, chose booth at very back, where low afternoon sun poured through glass. Lucia approached, holding menu and customary smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the Oak. Can I get you something to drink while you look over the menu?" Man didn't look up from smartphone, fingers flying. "Black coffee, and a glass of water." "Right away, sir," Lucia said softly. She wasn't offended. Behind cold exterior usually lay heavy heart or stressful day. She returned quickly, placing steaming mug and water with gentle care. "Whenever you're ready to order, I'll be right here." Man finally raised eyes. For fleeting second, gaze locked with hers. Something in expression shifted. Lucia's green eyes, clear, deep, far too sad for her age, weren't easily forgotten. But he broke contact, annoyed by distraction. "What do you recommend?" he asked, tone crisp like interrogation. "The beef pot pie is fresh out of the oven. Soup of the day hearty vegetable," Lucia replied warmly. "On hot afternoon like this, soup and fresh coffee, very comforting." "I didn't ask what you would do," Man said dryly. Comment sharp enough to make anyone flinch, but Lucia simply widened smile. "You're entirely right, sir. Forgive me. I'll give you a moment." She turned and walked away without losing composure. From kitchen window, Rose, oldest cook, had watched. "That guy is looking for trouble," Rose muttered. "Watch your back with him, sweetheart. He's just tired, Rose, like the rest of us," Lucia said with soft laugh. "Tired men don't wear $10,000 watches," Rose grumbled. Man eventually ordered vegetable soup and pot pie. Ate in absolute silence. Barely looking at plate. Attention consumed by phone. Took short, low-voiced calls uttering, "Contract, percentages, I don't accept less." Throughout, Lucia remained attentive hostess. Refilled water. Cleared plates. Asked if everything to liking. Meeting monosyllabic answers with unshakable politeness. Then, sudden buzz in Lucia's apron pocket. She stepped behind counter, pulled phone. Message from Mrs. Clara. Matthew's fever is spiking again. What should I do? For fraction of second, professional mask cracked. She pressed phone tightly to chest, closed eyes, took ragged breath, typed back. Cold compresses on forehead. I'll be home, second shift ends. Hold on, my love. Tucked phone away, forced smile back, but didn't realize man in black suit had seen it all. Watched tremble in hands, sharp intake of breath, forced cheerfulness. For first time that afternoon, set phone flat on table, studied her intently. When finished meal, signaled for check. Lucia brought it on small silver tray, placed peppermint candy beside as for every customer. It was pleasure serving you, sir. Have wonderful afternoon in Savannah. Man pulled leather wallet, paid with crisp new $100 bills. Then, taking sleek silver pen, deliberately wrote something on tip line of receipt. Stood, buttoned jacket, left paper face down. Without single word of goodbye, walked out, bell chiming. Lucia approached to clear, turned receipt over. On tip line, elegant commanding cursive, dollars. Beneath, sufficient. Lucia froze, staring. Bill over $40. She had given 2 hours flawless service, smiled through rudeness, refilled water dozen times, never complained. $0. And sufficient, as if to say you had enough of my time, deserve nothing more. Felt like physical blow. Lucia felt heat rush to face, not just money. God knew she desperately needed every cent that week. It was sheer calculated cruelty. To this man, she wasn't human being, merely piece of utility to be used and dismissed. Tears stung eyes, but refused to let fall in dining room. How much did he leave you? Rose asked, leaning over counter. Lucia didn't answer right away, fingers tightening around crumpled paper. Sweetheart, how much? Rose pressed. Nothing, Lucia whispered, voice cracking. He left me nothing. Rose snatched receipt, read elegant handwriting. Face flushed anger. That miserable piece of work. Sufficient? Who does he think he is? I'm going out there right now to give him peace of my mind. No, Rose, please don't, Lucia begged, grabbing Cook's arm. It's not worth it. Of course it's worth it. You treated him like royalty for 2 hours. Lucia looked at Rose, green eyes shimmering unshed tears but full of resolve. If I stop to fight with every customer who treats me poorly, I'll never make it home. I have little boy with fever waiting. I don't have energy for pride, Rose. I only have energy to survive. Words spoken quietly, without theatrical drama, making them heavier. Rose softened, pulling young mother into brief, fierce hug. Lucia allowed herself held for second before stepping back, wiping eyes with back of hand, picking up tray. Shift wasn't over. Life didn't pause. Single mothers didn't have luxury of breaking down in middle of afternoon. That night, when Lucia finally walked through front door, found Matthew asleep, skin burning hot, chest whistling with every breath. Mrs. Clara looked up from bedside chair, face pale. I kept cold cloths on him, Lucia, but this isn't normal cold. He needs real doctor, kind in big city hospital. I know, Lucia whispered. Knelt by mattress, brushing damp curl from son's forehead, listening terrifying rattle in chest. For first time in months, let herself weep silently in dark. Pulled crumpled receipt from pocket. Looked at cold inscription under faded lamp. Sufficient. You don't know anything about what is sufficient, she whispered bitterly to empty room. Smoothed paper, placed on nightstand, too exhausted to throw away, completely unaware this cruel note was not end of story, but catalyst for total transformation. Alarm rang at 5 next morning, but Lucia already awake, sitting edge of bed watching Matthew breathe. Fever dipped slightly, but rattling remained. Kissed cheek gently. Mommy has to go to work, my love, she murmured. Mrs. Clara will be here soon. Take medicine and be good boy. Matthew opened large dark eyes, so like father's, and nodded sleepily. Will you bring me some peach cobbler? He whispered. Lucia's throat tightened. Boy loved diners' desserts. Whenever could, brought day-old slice meant to be discarded. If there's any left, I'll bring biggest piece. I promise. As pinned hair up in bathroom mirror, eyes fell upon receipt on nightstand. $0. Sufficient. Wave of resentment washed over, but forced herself breathe. Shoved receipt into apron pocket as bitter reminder of world's harshness, walked out into cool, dark morning. When arrived at the Oak, sky just turning pale gray. Unlocked heavy doors, flipped lights, started large coffee percolators. Rose arrived shortly after, shivering from early breeze. How's the little one? A little better, Rose. Fever dropped a bit. Are you taking him to that clinic this week? As soon as I get paid, Rose. As soon as I get paid. Rose looked with mixed deep affection and old-world frustration. Lucia, as soon as I get paid has been your answer for months. Some things can't wait. Lucia didn't reply. Took clean cloth, went to clean back booths. Task left from night shift because dishwasher called out. Didn't complain. Never did. But when reached booth at very back, exact table man in black suit sat, she lifted small plastic flower vase in center and stopped. Beneath vase lay piece of heavy cream-colored paper, folded neatly into 4 sections. Intentionally hidden where only someone cleaning thoroughly would find. Lucia frowned, picked up, unfolded. Written in exact same elegant commanding cursive handwritten note. Yesterday's tip was not on the receipt. If you have the courage to find it, come today, Friday, at 11 o'clock in the morning to the address below. Ask for AV. What you perceived as a humiliation was a test. You did not fail it. Bring the child if you wish. AV. Beneath text, address located in downtown Atlanta, right in heart of prestigious financial district. Lucia read note 3 times, heart hammering against ribs. What's that? Rose asked, walking over with stacked fresh plates. Nothing, Lucia said quickly, folding paper, hiding in palm. Just trash. But Rose's sharp eyes caught elegant handwriting. Narrowed eyes. That's the writing from that arrogant man yesterday. What did he leave? Let me see. Knowing Rose wouldn't drop matter, Lucia reluctantly handed over paper. Rose read silently, lips moving with words. When finished, looked up horrified. Lucia, don't you dare go near that place. I'm not planning to go, Rose. Of course I'm not. A strange man who humiliates you, hides secret note, and demands you show up at some high-rise building with your child? Honey, this smells like trouble. This is dangerous. I know, Rose. I'm not foolish. Burn it. That's the best thing you can do with piece of paper like that, Rose ordered. Lucia nodded, but didn't burn it. Slipped back into apron pocket alongside receipt. Throughout busy morning, every time fingers brushed thick paper, cascade of questions flooded mind. The tip was not on the receipt. You did not fail the test. What kind of man would orchestrate such bizarre game? During 15-minute afternoon break, pulled phone, searched address on note. Massive glass-fronted skyscraper appeared, bearing name, the Vargas Corporate Group. Clicked company profile. Photograph appeared. It was him. Article identified as Alejandro Vargas, one of most powerful and wealthy real estate developers in country. Business magazines described with titles like The Iron Executive and The Unreachable Billionaire. Lucia leaned back against cold kitchen wall. Wave of dizziness. Why would man who owned half commercial ports and high-rises in country spend afternoon testing Waitress in Savannah? Warnings from Rose echoed. Wealthy men often viewed poor women as toys. But then another sentence from note echoed louder. Bring the child if you wish. How did he know about Matthew? She had never mentioned son to him. Then remembered text message from Mrs. Clara behind counter. Brief moment visible despair. Way pressed phone to chest. He had been watching her. He had seen through polite facade and recognized quiet agony of mother with sick child. That realization terrified her more than anything, because Lucia had built entire survival on hiding pain, and this stranger had read it instantly. At 11 o'clock Friday morning, Lucia found herself standing on immaculate marble sidewalk outside glass tower of the Vargas Group in downtown Atlanta. She had left Matthew safely with Mrs. Clara. That was one non-negotiable condition. If this turned out trap or cruel joke, she would face it alone. Wore only decent dress. Faded navy blue cotton reserved for church and funerals. Standing among men and women carrying expensive leather briefcases and wearing impeccable designer suits, felt completely out of place. 3 times turned toward subway station to leave. 3 times forced herself stop. "Just hear what he has to say," she whispered. For Matthew. Stepped through revolving glass doors into breathtaking lobby, with soaring ceilings and white marble floors. Walked up to security desk, swallowing pride. "Good morning. I'm here to see Mr. Vargas. AV. I have 11 o'clock appointment." Receptionist raised eyebrow, clearly skeptical, glancing at faded dress, but typed name into computer. Professional indifference vanished instantly. "Lucia Mendoza?" "Yes, ma'am. You are expected. Floor 40. The executive assistant will escort you from the elevator." Lucia's knees felt weak, as high-speed elevators shot upward in absolute silence, watching vast city shrink beneath through glass panel. 40 floors. She had never been this high in life. Down there, somewhere in distance, was tiny apartment, diner, entire difficult life. Elevator doors opened into massive penthouse office, with panoramic windows overlooking entire Atlanta skyline. Standing by glass with hands in pockets was Alejandro Vargas. "You came," he said quietly, turning around. "I confess, I wasn't entirely certain you would have the courage." Lucia didn't slide into chair. Stood tall, hands gripping worn purse. "I didn't come here to play games, Mr. Vargas," she said, voice remarkably steady. Marched over to massive oak desk, dropped crumpled receipt and secret note onto polished wood. "You came into my diner. I served you for 2 hours with absolute respect and kindness. And you left me this. Do you have any idea what $0 means to a woman like me? Do you know what a tip means when your child is sick and bills never stop?" Voice trembled, but refused to stop. "You humiliated me in front of co-workers, just to amuse yourself, and then hid note like coward, talking about tests. I am here now. What do you want from me? Speak quickly, because I have sick child waiting, and I don't have time for amusements of bored billionaires." Alejandro studied her with profound respect. "You have immense courage, Miss Mendoza. The 0 tip was a calculated test of character. I visit modest diners anonymously, as a difficult customer, and leave nothing to see how people react when there's nothing to gain. Most insult me. You treated me with grace and chose dignity over rage. That is what I have been searching for." Lucia stood frozen, anger in chest giving way to profound, unsettling confusion. "I still don't understand what any of this has to do with me." "I know," Alejandro said, opening desk drawer and pulling out thick, unmarked white envelope. "And I am not fully ready to explain everything yet. But first, let me correct my mistake from yesterday. This is the true tip your service deserved." Extended envelope toward her. Lucia took step back, hands flat against sides. "I don't want your charity. It isn't charity. It is what you earned honestly. We will discuss the rest later." "I said I don't want your money, Mr. Vargas," Lucia repeated, voice cracking with raw emotion. "I didn't come here for a handout. I came because my son is suffering, and your note was a desperate, foolish glimmer of hope for me. I thought maybe, but I see what this is now. You are just a lonely, broken man who plays with poor people's lives to see if anyone is real. Congratulations, you found someone real. A penniless single mother. Do you feel better about yourself now?" Words cut through room like knives. For first time in professional life, Alejandro Vargas lowered gaze, visibly ashamed. "No," he said quietly. "I don't feel better. I feel incredibly small." Heavy silence descended upon vast office. Lucia looked at him, and beneath expensive gray suit and 40 floors of corporate power, saw a man who was just as fractured, in his own way, as she was. Reached out, picked up old purse, turned toward door. "I'm leaving. You can keep your secrets." "Lucia! Wait!" Alejandro called out, voice laced with sudden, desperate vulnerability. "Your son, what is wrong with him?" Lucia paused at threshold. Back to him. A chronic respiratory condition. He can't breathe properly at night. He needs a specialist and tests that I can't afford. Why do you care? Alejandro took long time to answer. When spoke, voice sounded far away. Because 30 years ago, I was a little boy living in a decaying house, watching my younger sister Anna struggle for every breath. My father was a poor laborer who couldn't afford a specialist. And I know exactly what the sound of a mother's terror sounds like when she realizes she cannot save her child. Lucia slowly turned around, staring at him in disbelief. Story didn't fit image of ruthless billionaire, but raw pain in eyes impossible to fake. "Goodbye, Mr. Vargas," she whispered, stepping into elevator. As doors closed, realized hands shaking, and against all logic, small part of her didn't want to run away. 3 days passed without a word. Lucia threw herself back into exhausting routine at diner, the early morning coffee, heavy trays, and agonizing sound of Matthew's wheezing at night. She had confessed everything to Rose, who immediately crossed herself. "See? I told you. A crazy billionaire playing games with working folks. You did the right thing by walking out, honey. Men like that are dangerous." "I don't know, Rose," Lucia said thoughtfully, as wiped down counter. He didn't look crazy at the end. He just looked hollow. On 4th afternoon, gleaming black luxury sedan pulled up to curb directly in front of diner. Few customers inside turned to stare through windows. Cars like that didn't stop at the Oak. Rear door opened. Alejandro Vargas stepped out, looking completely out of place in tailored suit against weathered gravel of parking lot. Walked inside, bell chiming above him, walked straight to same booth at back, sat down and waited. Lucia felt blood rush to cheeks. Took menu, walked over to his table. "I thought you were done testing me, Mr. Vargas," she said in low voice. "I am here without any games or tests." "Lucia," Alejandro said, looking up at her with complete sincerity. "Can you give me 10 minutes when your shift ends at 4 o'clock? I will wait outside. If you don't come out, I will leave, and I promise I will never cross your path again." Lucia studied his face for a long moment before nodding faintly. 4 o'clock. At 10 minutes past 4, Lucia walked out of diner. Black sedan still there, Alejandro leaning against door. Opened passenger side for her. "Would you mind if we drove for a few minutes? There is a place I want to show you. It isn't far, and it isn't a trick. You can text your friend my license plate number if it makes you feel safe." Lucia, who had already texted license plate to Rose with instructions to call police if she wasn't back in 2 hours, quietly got into car. They drove in silence away from historic district, heading toward older, neglected outskirts of Savannah. Oak trees here untrimmed, houses small and weathered with peeling paint. Alejandro pulled car over in front of tiny, run-down cottage. "I was born in this house," Alejandro said, eyes fixed on cracked porch. "My father was a construction worker, and my mother washed other people's clothes. We were poor, Lucia. The kind of poor where you skip meals so your children can eat." Lucia stared at Billionaire, utterly stunned. "When I was 8 years old," Alejandro continued, jaw tightening, "my 6-year-old sister Anna became very sick with a heart and lung condition. My parents begged every wealthy doctor, every bank, and every businessman in the city for help. They practically got down on their knees and humiliated themselves. No one helped us. The wealthy families looked at us like we were stray dogs." Paused, voice cracking. "Anna died right in that front room. She was the exact same age your Matthew is now." Lucia felt breath leave lungs. "I am so incredibly sorry, Alejandro," she murmured, using his first name for first time. "My father never recovered. He died of a broken heart a few years later," Alejandro said, staring at hands. "On the day of my sister's funeral, I made 2 solemn promises to myself. First, that I would become so powerful that no one could ever look down on my family again. I worked like an animal, took every scholarship, built businesses, lost everything, and built it again. By 35, I had achieved it. But the second promise, look down. The second promise was that I would build a legacy, so that no poor child would ever have to die simply because their parents couldn't afford a doctor. Turned to look at her, eyes shining with unshed tears. But money changes a man slowly, Lucia. You surround yourself with lawyers, false friends, and opportunistic women. You become cynical and cold to protect what you built. I forgot my second promise. I became the very thing I hated, a wealthy man hidden away from the world, until a few weeks ago, when I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. That's why I started those tests. I was desperately searching for someone who still possessed real goodness, someone to remind me of who I used to be. And then I found you. A poor waitress, Lucia whispered. A mother who refused to lose her dignity in the middle of a storm, Alejandro corrected fiercely. I will not let Matthew suffer the same fate as my sister Lucia. Not while I have the power to stop it. I can't just take your money, Lucia said, tears spilling over lashes. People don't give away fortunes without wanting something in return. I have nothing to give you, and I won't owe anyone for my son's life. I am not asking for anything in return, Alejandro said gently. I know you don't trust me. If I were in your shoes, I wouldn't trust me either. So let's make a deal. Let a proper specialist look at Matthew tomorrow. No strings attached, no debt, just a single consultation. If you want to walk away after that, I will never bother you again. But don't let your pride stand in the way of your son's health. Lucia knew he was right. She could refuse handout for herself, but couldn't deny son chance to heal. Just a consultation, she agreed softly. And I will pay you back, even if it takes my entire life. Next morning, private car brought Lucia and Matthew to state-of-the-art pediatric clinic in Atlanta. Alejandro wasn't there, keeping promise to give them space, but had arranged everything. Met by Dr. Andrews, one of top pediatric pulmonologists in country, examined Matthew with tenderness that moved Lucia to tears, running tests and taking x-rays while making little boy laugh. After hour, Dr. Andrews called Lucia into private office. Mrs. Mendoza, I'll be direct with you. Matthew has severe chronic bronchial condition that has worsened due to lack of early treatment. But good news is, it is entirely curable. With dedicated regimen of specialized medication, respiratory therapy, and regular monitoring, he can lead completely normal life within a year or two. He can run, play sports, everything. Lucia covered mouth, sob escaping throat. And if he doesn't get this treatment? Dr. Andrews looked at her gravely. Without it, his lung tissue will continue to scar with every major attack. Eventually, it will become life-threatening. That wheezing you hear at night is serious warning sign. How much does the treatment cost? Lucia asked, voice trembling. Doctor wrote down figure, and Lucia felt room spin. It was astronomical amount of money. More than she could save in 10 years of working double shifts at diner. 10 years that Matthew simply did not have. She walked out of clinic holding son's hand, feeling crushing weight in soul. To know cure existed but was entirely out of reach was most exquisite form of torture. That evening, Alejandro called her. How did the appointment go? He can be cured, Lucia said, voice breaking completely into phone. My boy can be completely healthy, but the treatment costs a fortune, Mr. Vargas. I can't pay for it, so it's the same as having no cure at all. Do you know what it feels like to look at your child and know you can't save him? It's hell. Come to my office tomorrow morning, Lucia, Alejandro said urgently. I have a legitimate business proposition for you. It is not charity, and it is not a game. Just hear me out. Next morning, with lawyer Mr. Vance, Alejandro offered Lucia the position of director of the new Ana Vargas Foundation for low-income children's health care. He wanted someone who had lived poverty and had true heart. High salary, Matthew's treatment fully covered. No hidden clauses. Why me? She asked. Because you have true heart. And since the diner, I can't stop thinking about you. The job and Matthew's health are yours unconditionally. She needed time, but that night Matthew had a massive attack. She called Alejandro desperately. He arrived with the doctor, stabilized Matthew and admitted him. She spent the night by his bed. He stayed in the hallway. At dawn, Matthew was breathing clearly. She hugged Alejandro in relief. "You saved my baby." Next morning, she signed the contract. Alejandro arrived before paramedics. Luxury car screeched to halt outside small cottage, sprinted through front door without jacket, tie loosened, unrecognizable as cold billionaire. Right behind him, Dr. Andrews, carrying emergency medical kit. Doctor quickly administered specialized nebulizer treatment and injection that relaxed Matthew's spasming airways. Within minutes, terrifying rattling sound began to recede, and healthy color returned to little boy's cheeks. He opened dark eyes, exhausted but safe. "We've stabilized him," Dr. Andrews said, wiping brow. "But we need to admit him to the private pavilion tonight to begin the long-term therapy. We cannot delay this any longer." "Do whatever it takes," Alejandro said without second of hesitation. "Every expense is taken care of." Matthew transferred to state-of-the-art medical center. Lucia spent entire night sitting beside son's bed, holding small hand, while advanced medical monitors chimed softly in background. Alejandro didn't leave either. Spent long hours sitting in hard plastic chair in hallway, offering no demands, simply choosing to stay. At dawn, Matthew was sleeping peacefully, breathing deep and clear for first time in life. Lucia stepped out into quiet hallway. Alejandro stood up immediately. "How is he?" "He's resting perfectly," Lucia said, tears of profound relief streaming down face. "The doctor says the treatment is already working. He's going to be okay." And then, without thinking, threw arms around Alejandro's neck, held him tightly, letting go of all fear, exhaustion, and gratitude she had carried alone for years. Alejandro, who couldn't remember last time someone had embraced him with pure, unselfish emotion, wrapped strong arms around her and held her close. "Thank you," she whispered against shoulder. "You saved my baby." "You don't ever have to thank me," he murmured into hair. This is what wealth was always meant to be used for. Next morning, Lucia signed the employment contract. She didn't sign for wealth or out of fear. She signed because she realized Alejandro Vargas was entirely real, and her son was finally going to live. Weeks that followed felt like beautiful dream. Matthew's health improved dramatically. He regained energy, cheeks grew chubby, laughter filled their new, modest apartment, far away from damp air of old outskirts. Lucia proved to be extraordinary at new job. She understood desperate families who came to Foundation because she had stood in their shoes. She left diner with tearful, loving goodbye from Rose, who gave absolute blessing. Gentle, unspoken romance began to bloom between Alejandro and Lucia. Business dinners that stretched into late-night conversations about pasts, fears, and dreams. Lucia felt defensive walls she had built around heart crumbling piece by piece. But true happiness rarely goes unnoticed by those bitter enough to hate it. Victoria, Alejandro's wealthy ex-wife, who had betrayed him years earlier, saw a tabloid photo of him with Lucia and launched a ruthless smear campaign. She spread rumors that Lucia was a gold digger, faking her son's crisis, leaked doctored tabloid stories, bribed a fake TV interview, and pressured the board questioning Lucia's suitability. Lucia received a vicious anonymous email telling her to run away before ruining Alejandro's reputation. Morning after receiving email, leakage, and public scrutiny, Lucia walked into Executive Tower with heavy heart, carrying signed letter of resignation. She couldn't allow past or poverty to destroy beautiful legacy Alejandro was building for his sister. But before she could hand letter to his assistant, she was called directly into main boardroom. Entire board of directors gathered, along with Mr. Vance. Sitting in front row, wearing elegant designer dress and smug smile of triumph, was Victoria. Mr. Vargas, one of senior board members, began pompously. "We must address the serious reputational risks regarding Miss Mendoza's continued employment at the Foundation. Serious allegations have been raised about her integrity." Victoria crossed legs, leaning back to savor moment of total humiliation. Lucia lowered eyes, bracing herself to hand over resignation and walk out of their lives forever to save dignity. But Alejandro slowly stood up from head of table. When he spoke, Voice didn't contain shred of warmth he showed her in private. It was terrifyingly cold. Commanding voice of legendary tycoon who had built empire from absolute nothing. Before anyone in this room utters another word regarding Miss Mendoza, Alejandro said, icy gaze scanning board members before locking onto ex-wife. I want you all to listen very carefully. And I want you to hear this clearly, Victoria. Room fell into absolute suffocating silence. I know exactly who fabricated these rumors, Alejandro announced, voice echoing off glass walls. I know who paid for the fake interviews, who leaked the photographs, and who attempted to blackmail my foundation director. My legal team has spent the last 48 hours gathering the bank transfers and phone records. I have ironclad proof of criminal defamation and corporate interference. Stepped away from podium and walked over to stand directly beside Lucia, placing protective, firm hand on her shoulder. This woman is the most honorable, honest human being I have ever encountered in my entire life. She did not use her son to get to me. She didn't even know who I was when she served me with kindness while I treated her like garbage. Anyone who wishes to challenge her position will have to go through me and my entire legal infrastructure. The board meeting is adjourned. Victoria's triumphant smile shattered into expression of pure rage and fear, as board members quickly gathered papers in panic. Lucia looked up at Alejandro, letter of resignation crushing in hand, realizing for first time in life that she no longer had to fight her battles alone. After boardroom cleared, Victoria stormed out of building in fury, but her malice had only grown more desperate. Meanwhile, in quiet of office, Lucia was still trembling. Why did you do that, Alejandro? You just threatened your entire board of directors for me. Do you have any idea what that could cost your business? I don't care about the cost, Alejandro said softly, turning to face her. I have spent too many years protecting profit margins and corporate images. For once in my life, I am standing up for what is truly good. What is that in your hand? Lucia looked down at crumpled paper. My resignation. I came here to protect you from the scandal. Alejandro took letter from her hand and slowly tore it into tiny pieces, dropping them into wastebasket. You aren't going anywhere, Lucia. Not unless you truly want to leave me. That evening, instead of taking her to expensive restaurant, Alejandro invited Lucia to his private residence, a beautiful historic estate outside Atlanta that felt remarkably warm and lived in. As Lucia walked through Grand Library, eyes caught old, faded black and white photograph framed on side table. It showed poor family from decades past. A proud laborer, tired wife, young Alejandro, and sweet little girl. My family, Alejandro said, coming up behind her with 2 glasses of iced tea. Before everything changed, Lucia leaned closer to photograph, breath catching in throat. Eyes locked onto heavy silver medallion hanging around neck of Alejandro's father in picture. It was solid silver disc with highly distinct, deeply carved image of an old oak tree. That medallion, Lucia whispered, hands shaking as touched glass frame. My father possessed that exact same medallion. He kept it wrapped in velvet in his wooden lockbox. It was his most sacred possession. He told me it was given to him by his absolute best friend, a brother he lost touch with when they were young. I inherited it when he passed away. Alejandro went deathly pale, nearly dropping glass. What was your father's name, Lucia? Thomas. Thomas Mendoza. Glass slipped from Alejandro's fingers, shattering against hardwood floor. My God, he choked out, sinking into armchair. It isn't possible. Alejandro, what is it? Did you know him? Thomas Mendoza was the savior of my family, Alejandro said, voice trembling with profound, old grief. When my sister Anna was dying, when every wealthy person turned their backs on us, there was one single man who tried to save us. A poor mechanic who didn't have $1 to his name, but he sold his only truck, took extra work, and spent weeks running through the city, trying to raise the funds for my sister's surgery. He didn't raise enough in time, and Anna died anyway. But he stayed by my father's side through the darkest nights. They were like brothers. Before we moved away, my father had 2 identical medallions, carved from an old silver coin. He gave one to Thomas and kept one, promising that their bond would never be broken. They called it the Covenant of the Oak. Lucia covered her mouth, tears flowing. The diner where I worked is called the Oak Diner. My father told me to work there if desperate. The name brought good luck. After Anna died, we lost touch with Thomas, Alejandro said, voice breaking. I searched for him for years to thank him. He died 8 years ago. Before passing, he told Lucia about a boy with fire in his eyes who would achieve greatness. They realized the medallions were the covenant of the oak their fathers had made. When placed together, the oak roots intertwined and the inscription completed, "True devotion always finds its way home." Alejandro kissed her. It was the continuation of a story written long before they were born. But Victoria's desperation peaked. She filed a false CPS petition accusing Lucia of medical neglect to take Matthew. Lucia was devastated. Alejandro swore to fight. The legal battle was agonizing. Stress caused Matthew a flare-up. Julian offered a bribe in the hospital, $500,000, and a ticket to leave if she resigned. Lucia refused, saying her dignity had no price and she would not betray her father's integrity. In the final hearing, Dr. Andrews testified Lucia had managed heroically. Evidence proved Victoria orchestrated the complaint. Alejandro told the judge that Lucia was the daughter of the man who saved his family and had raised her son with courage money cannot buy. The only neglectful person was Victoria. The case was dismissed. Matthew's custody was secured. Victoria was investigated and her reputation ruined. Lucia stepped into the sunshine holding Matthew, victorious. The resolution reminds us that true value cannot be calculated by wealth or titles. In a world measuring success by power, it is easy to believe modest positions are lesser, or dignity can be bought. Yet as Thomas Mendoza's legacy and Lucia's resilience show, the most enduring currency is quiet integrity, when no one watches, and nothing to gain. Dignity is sacred internal armor for those choosing grace over bitterness. When the world presents coldness, easiest is to reflect it back. But real strength lies in refusing to let another's poor behavior diminish your standards. Lucia served with excellence because she deserved her own standards. Actions must reflect own character, not reaction to others' lack. This story illustrates the long arc of justice. Thomas's kindness 30 years prior did not vanish. It remained a seed that bloomed. No genuine compassion is lost. The universe returns kindness through unpredictable paths. Live with conviction that small daily choices, showing kindness, protecting integrity, and honoring dignity, are the only investments surviving time. Wealth can be lost and reputations manipulated, but a life built on uncompromised honor creates a legacy so powerful, even coldest hearts melt. Revealing true sufficiency is in the goodness we give away.